In a dramatic escalation of regional tensions, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko has placed his nation's armed forces on high combat alert, following Lithuania's decision to partially close its border crossings with Belarus and tighten airspace restrictions. The move, which Vilnius describes as a necessary response to hybrid threats from its eastern neighbor, has drawn widespread attention and alarm across Europe, with many analysts warning that this standoff could spiral into a new flashpoint between NATO and the Moscow-Minsk alliance. According to reports from Reuters and TVP World, the Lithuanian government recently announced that it would temporarily restrict border traffic and monitor Belarusian flights more closely, citing repeated incidents of unmanned balloons, alleged smuggling activities, and suspected attempts to destabilize its territory. Officials in Vilnius accused Minsk of engaging in hybrid warfare, a blend of propaganda, cyber operations, and irregular tactics meant to undermine Western nations. President Lukashenko, however, has vehemently rejected these claims, calling Lithuania's decision a crazy scam and a provocation orchestrated by the West. In a fiery televised speech from Minsk, the Belarusian leader warned that his country will not tolerate further aggression and that the military is ready for any scenario. According to state media, Lukashenko has ordered immediate readiness drills, border reinforcements, and heightened surveillance along key transit routes near Grodno and Brest. Observers say this is the most serious security alert declared in Belarus since 2022, when tensions first escalated following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Belarus has remained one of Moscow's closest allies, allowing Russian forces to use its territory for launching attacks, training, and logistical operations. Western governments have therefore viewed Minsk's actions with deep suspicion, accusing Lukashenko of serving as a proxy actor for the Kremlin's regional ambitions. For Belarus, however, Lukashenko's narrative is quite different. He portrays his country as a sovereign state caught in the middle of a larger geopolitical confrontation between Russia and NATO. They are trying to drag us into their war, he said. The West wants to isolate Belarus to destroy its independence and to use our borders as a new front line against Russia. The latest crisis erupted after several Lithuanian officials accused Belarusian authorities of sending surveillance balloons and strange objects across the border. Vilnius responded by closing 2 major crossing points and strengthening border patrols. It also issued travel advisories urging citizens to avoid visiting Belarus due to security risks. In response, Lukashenko convened an emergency meeting of the Security Council, announcing that Belarus's air defense systems and border troops were to remain on 24-hour alert. Military analysts believe this posture serves both strategic and political purposes. Internally, Lukashenko faces growing domestic discontent, particularly among younger Belarusians frustrated with economic stagnation and continued political repression. By invoking an external threat, the Belarusian government seeks to consolidate power and rally public support around the flag. Externally, it sends a message to NATO that Belarus remains a loyal and active component of Russia's defense architecture. Meanwhile, Lithuanian and Polish officials have warned that the Belarusian move could be a pretext for future military provocations. Poland's defense minister noted that any escalation near the Belarusian border must be treated seriously, emphasizing that NATO forces stationed in the region are on standby and monitoring developments closely. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has not issued a direct statement on the latest alert, but alliance sources say they are closely following the situation. The European Union has condemned what it calls Belarus's continued militarization and alignment with Russian aggression. In Brussels, EU diplomats reaffirmed support for Lithuania, Latvia, and Poland, all of which share borders with Belarus, and pledged to provide intelligence assistance and increase surveillance equipment. The United States has echoed similar sentiments, urging Lukashenko to avoid any actions that might destabilize the region further. Inside Belarus state television has portrayed the crisis as proof of Western hostility. broadcasting footage of soldiers conducting readiness drills, missile systems being transported toward border regions, and Lukashenko personally inspecting command posts. Government commentators repeatedly describe Lithuania's move as a dangerous escalation designed to weaken Belarus and cut it off from trade routes. Independent Belarusian journalists, however, provide a starkly different perspective. They argue that Lukashenko's administration is using the Lithuanian border issue as a diversion from internal problems, including widespread arrests, international sanctions, and economic isolation. Since the disputed 2020 presidential election, widely regarded as fraudulent by the international community, Lukashenko's government has cracked down harshly on dissent, imprisoning thousands of activists and shutting down dozens of media outlets. According to rights groups, the number of political prisoners in Belarus remains among the highest in Europe. Amnesty International reports that the regime continues to use intimidation and forced confessions to silence critics. The recent partial amnesty announced by the government in October, releasing a small number of detainees, was dismissed by human rights observers as a public relations gesture meant to distract from the worsening situation. Despite international isolation, Lukashenko remains politically resilient, largely thanks to Vladimir Putin's unwavering support. Russia provides Belarus with financial aid, discounted energy supplies, and military hardware in exchange for loyalty and strategic cooperation. Russian troops continue to train alongside Belarusian forces, and the two nations regularly hold joint exercises under the Union State framework. Recently, Moscow confirmed that tactical nuclear weapons remain stationed on Belarusian soil, a development that has deeply alarmed neighboring countries. This makes the Lithuanian border crisis especially dangerous. Any miscalculation, even a minor skirmish, could potentially draw in Russia and, by extension, provoke a NATO response. Security analysts warn that the Baltic region is already overloaded with tension, with military buildups, intelligence operations, and mutual accusations at record levels. For ordinary Belarusians, the situation feels increasingly unstable. Many fear that Lukashenko's rhetoric could trigger real conflict, especially if external actors respond forcefully. People are tired of living under fear, one Minsk resident told reporters anonymously. We don't want another war, we just want peace and freedom. In Vilnius, Lithuanian leaders remain defiant. Prime Minister Ingrida Šimonytė stated that Lithuania will not be intimidated by threats or false accusations. She emphasized that border closures are a defensive measure, not an act of aggression, and that her government will continue to coordinate closely with NATO allies. Belarus must understand that hybrid provocations will not break our unity, she said. The crisis also has a significant economic dimension. Belarus relies heavily on trade routes through Lithuania and Poland to export potash, fertilizers, and manufactured goods. With these routes now restricted, the Belarusian economy faces additional strain. Analysts estimate that sanctions and logistical barriers have already cost Belarus billions of dollars since 2021, forcing it to rely almost entirely on Russian markets. Minsk has attempted to mitigate these losses by strengthening ties with China, Iran, and other non-Western countries, but the results remain limited. Experts believe that without Western markets or investment, Belarus's long-term growth prospects are bleak. Lukashenko is cornered economically, said one European diplomat. That makes him more unpredictable politically, and that's what worries everyone. The international community now watches closely to see how far Lukashenko will go. Some speculate that the current alert may gradually subside if Lithuania refrains from further actions. Others fear the Belarusian leader could escalate matters, perhaps by conducting large-scale military exercises near the border or by allowing Russia to deploy additional troops under the pretext of joint defense. Moscow's reaction has been cautiously supportive. A Kremlin spokesperson said that Russia understands Belarus's concerns and views Lithuania's actions as an unfriendly move against the Union state. Russian state media amplified Lukashenko's accusations. portraying the West as seeking to encircle Russia and its allies through military and political pressure. Diplomatic channels between Minsk and Vilnius remain officially open, though communication has grown increasingly strained. European mediators, including representatives from Hungary and Austria, have offered to facilitate dialogue, but so far no formal negotiation has taken place. The Lithuanian government insists that any talks must begin with Belarus ending hostile hybrid operations and releasing all political prisoners. In the broader context, this confrontation illustrates the deepening polarization of Eastern Europe. On one side stand NATO and the EU, defending what they describe as democratic sovereignty and collective security. On the other side are Russia and Belarus, claiming to resist Western domination and defend their own civilizational sphere. Between these narratives lies a dangerous reality, a heavily militarized border, a fragile balance of power, and millions of civilians caught in the middle. As the standoff continues, the coming weeks could prove decisive. If Lukashenko maintains his high combat alert and continues his defiant rhetoric, the risk of accidental clashes will grow. Yet if cooler heads prevail and diplomatic pressure mounts, both sides may seek to de-escalate before the crisis spirals out of control. For now, Belarus stands at a crossroads, militarily alert, politically isolated, and economically strained. Whether Lukashenko's gamble will strengthen his hold on power or push the country closer to catastrophe remains to be seen. But one thing is certain: the world is watching, and the fragile peace on Europe's eastern frontier hangs by a thread.